Only two teams in the 2021 World Superbike Championship are based in the UK. After leaving the EU, BMW and Yamaha have to contend with bureaucracy and additional costs. By the way, you should stay tuned until the end if you don't want to miss anything interesting. And if you don't want to miss anything at all, just subscribe to my channel and click the little bell. Only then you'll get notifications. The transition phase of British membership in the EU ended on December 31st. Since then, the UK has been a third country and is treated differently in many ways. But all old rules that just apply now, no new rules. Anyone who's not on vacation to or from the UK must comply with customs and visa regulations. The teams SMR, Sean Muir Racing and Crescent have to deal with both. SMR organizes the BMW factory appearance, Crescent that of Yamaha. Border traffic with trucks along with material and team members is a bureaucratic monster. Obtaining customs papers costs time and money, and employees sometimes have to apply for work visas. The colleagues from Motorsport magazine talked to the teams. So-called carnets are required for the temporary import of goods into the EU that are not intended for sale. Each screw must be recorded and noted in the document, because on the return journey, the whereabouts could be checked. The fee for a carnet is £300 per truck and is valid for 1 year. In addition, a deposit of 40% of the value of the goods must be paid. However, if a truck is loaded differently, and a new chargeable carnet must be applied for. Therefore, SMR calculates that this administrative act will cost up to £5,000 for its 4 trucks. That's quite a number. And there's still great uncertainty about visa regulations because the regulations are not identical across the EU. For example, in Germany, UK nationals are considered third country nationals, as they are now. That means you have to apply for a work permit according to the general immigration law. You can initially enter the country without a visa and apply for your work permit here, which is hardly possible for a racing weekend. Fees are a matter, of course, there too. Visas are a nightmare, said Crescent boss Paul Denning. Some say we don't need a visa or work permit, others say we do. Yes, you do. Estimates for an all-inclusive Italian work visa ranges from €1,500 to €3,000 per person. And that's just one country. At the moment, the employees in our office are concentrating on it almost around the clock. The BMW and Yamaha Superbike teams have, of course, the resources to cope with the consequence of Brexit. It is more difficult for small teams in the 2 supersport classes. Here, the extra expenses can make a season in the World Cup completely impossible. And the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants to make domestic flights cheaper in the future and to lower an existing flight tax in Great Britain. How that corresponds with his new green ideas, I'm quite interested to hear that. This is based on information from the specialist magazine Arrow. Accordingly, the statements of the Prime Minister in London would be criticised because they did not cooperate with the common climate goals of the British government. I thought so too. In a guest article in the Telegraph news magazine on Thursday, the British Prime Minister speaks out in favour of a price reduction for flight connections within the UK. This emerges from consistent international media reports. According to this, passengers departing from UK have to date paid tax duties, which would be offset against the respective ticket price. The Prime Minister now wants to significantly reduce these tax levies. Isn't it time to reap this Brexit dividend and lower the passenger tax in order to strengthen ties with the country? We will consult to do this. Johnson said in a guest post for The Telegraph. Is he really now grasping for any straw to find something positive in Brexit, and now choosing something that he could make up and that completely goes against the rest of his politics? He must be desperate. According to media reports, Johnson's move has met with sharp criticism in the context of the strategy pursued by the British government to achieve the climate goals, as emphasized, among other things, by the transport union Transport Salaried Staff Association. In the wake of Johnson's announcement, they made demands that London should instead invest in really green passenger transport. Train connections are the most effective connection to bring people into the heart of our cities and villages, said Secretary General Manuel Cortes in this context. Johnson had recently announced a 20 billion investment program to improve UK infrastructure. The British government has recently been confronted with an extremely dynamic situation that is constantly bringing with it new challenges in politics and the economy. The hesitant Brexit negotiations and the pandemic that has been rampant since spring last year are showing serious economic consequences, which must now be offset as best as possible. In the meantime, the criticism of Johnson's announcements in the course of British climate policy, described in the article, is entirely justified. France, for example, had only recently debated the fundamental abolition of domestic flights with positive results. And the discussion will go on, I'm quite sure of that. And what have been the tangible effects of Brexit on Italians living and working in the UK so far? On December 31st, while the European continent was in the midst of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, something silently happened on the English Channel. The so-called transition period, which was designed to buy time while the EU-UK negotiations were taking place, ended that day, marking the definite exit from the UK from the European Union, although the official Brexit day was January 1st, 31st. The Brexit story is a long and convoluted one, which we will not address every time we will talk, but it's absolutely necessary to talk about Brexit. What is remarkable is that from January 1st, a EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement entered into force. The agreement is a first attempt to regulate the future relationship between the UK and the rest of the continent, but it's only provisional at the moment, and we have ratification problems because Boris doesn't want to hold up to the withdrawal agreement. As such, it is far from being perfect, as many commentators have argued. Nonetheless, this agreement marks a tangible break with the past, as it introduces considerable changes in trade and freedom of movement with the EU. In Italy, the Brexit issue went rather unnoticed, despite the fact that the UK hosts a considerable number of Italian citizens. In 2017, according to Istat, Italy's statistic office, the United Kingdom was the most popular destination of Italian migrants, with 21,000 living there. They are mainly young people aged 18 to 39 and from the north of Italy. Perhaps surprisingly, the majority of them, that's 70%, completed secondary education. Only 30% holds a university degree. But how has Brexit affected the lives of Italians working and studying in the UK so far? They were interviewed by a magazine, and so it was possible to get a sense of what's going on. So what are the effects of Brexit on their everyday lives? In many ways, the full effects of Brexit are yet to be seen. Angelo, a 35-year-old civil engineer from Campania, argues that nothing has changed so far and that it is too early to draw conclusions on the Brexit affair. The country has been for most of the time in lockdown, which has made it harder to assess the consequences on normal everyday life, and still does. Others instead seem to have already experienced the first effects. Gaia, 26-year-old with a job in marketing, acknowledges that while everyday life has not been significantly affected, she is worried about freedom of movement and her new status as a third country national with respect to the EU. Giuseppe, who has been living in Scotland for several years, notes that for the time being, the only available vegetables and groceries are broccoli and potatoes. And while that might seem not a big deal for Italians, it is. You know their Mediterranean kitchen. Julia and Davide, both PhD students in London, although in different fields, Julia in economics and Davide in physics, are working from Italy at the moment and wondering about how real life will look in the UK once back. However, Davide points out that his colleagues did everything possible to create a sense of community around him. I felt more integrated, without a doubt, despite the fact that Brexit means de facto separation. So those stories are quite interesting, and we will see how that will go on in the future. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.